Sweet dreams are made of this. Who am I to disagree? I've traveled the world in the 7 seas. Everybody's looking for something. Words of enduring truth from the prophet Annie Lennox, circa 1983. Everybody is looking for something. And of course, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. Humans are a striving bunch, always seeking and hoping and aspiring to some glorious imagined future. Such aspiration is baked into us at the cellular level, or at least I assume it must be. If it weren't, I can't imagine all that motivational speech stuff about vision and purpose and mission and living our best lives would resonate so deeply with us. And whether we embrace it or are repulsed by it, it does resonate. For many of us, the lifelong pursuit of some particular vision or purpose is very natural, clear, and profoundly fulfilling. Those who were lucky enough to define at an early age some specific thing that set their heart on fire are the world's high achievers. The ones who do all those things they talk about in the American dream. They pull themselves up by their bootstraps and arrive to the city with $5 in a dream and overcome some seemingly insurmountable obstacle. They toil tirelessly, never losing sight of their goal, and end up owning a skyscraper, or curing a disease, or sailing around the world in a homemade boat. And we read about them and praise them and admire them and buy their book and secretly resent them for making the rest of us look bad. Because the subtext of all of this is that once you know what your purpose in life is, you will inevitably succeed, whatever that means. And the subtext under that subtext is that if you are not succeeding, it must be because your purpose isn't clear enough, or maybe your purpose isn't good enough, or maybe you aren't good enough. And so for those of us who have not yet nailed down a single readily definable crystal clear purpose, life can feel like an interminable session of low-grade bullying, feeling judged constantly for our apparent lack of focus, for not meeting someone else's standard of success. Your son has potential, Mrs. Smith, he's just not applying himself. I've spent my fair share of time there, and I wouldn't wish that feeling on my worst enemy. So today, I want to do 3 things. First, I want to give you explicit permission to be wherever you are, clear or cloudy or completely in the dark about your life's purpose. Second, I want to let you in on a little secret. It might not be one thing, and that's absolutely fine. And third, I want you to consider that the most significant experiences you have in your life may have no apparent connection to any sort of purpose at all. There's a story about a fish, a young fish that swims up alongside an older fish and begins to express exasperation. I keep hearing about the ocean and it sounds amazing, but I can't find it. And the older fish replies, "What do you mean? The ocean is all around you." And the younger fish snaps back impatiently, "No, this is just water. I'm looking for the ocean." Have you ever let yourself be oversold on what the word purpose means? If every one of us were here to be a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon or win the Nobel Peace Prize, we'd have a lot of rockets and a lot of healthy brains and perhaps even world peace, but we'd have nothing to eat and nowhere to live. Your purpose doesn't have to be big to be important. And a lot of times the little things are bigger than they look. The Dalai Lama said, "If you think you are too small to be important, you've never been in bed with a mosquito." Your purpose also doesn't have to be related to your paying work. While I deeply believe that all forms of work have worth and dignity, I think we might struggle to staff some very essential jobs if we only hired people for whom that work was their life's purpose. How many people do you know who would feel a sense of profound spiritual fulfillment from washing dishes or collecting garbage? These are valuable, needed jobs, and we're grateful to the people who do them. But that work is probably not what they have dreamed of doing since they were children. Sometimes your paying work is something you wisely recognize as a piece of a bigger puzzle, or something you pursue as a means to achieve a purpose in some other domain. You may think your purpose needs to have world-spanning impact, and that's not true either. The birth of a child may light a fire in the heart of a parent, and suddenly nothing else matters but to raise that child in the best way they can. Raising a single child may not be world-spanning, but no one would question the worthiness of such a purpose. Indeed, a child raised by someone with such devotion could in turn become the one to make the world-spanning impact. And other parents of children feel pulled by other visions. Parenting may not be their sole focus, and that's okay too. Parenting doesn't have to be an obsession to be done well. We get ourselves so wound up about purpose, focus, and perfection, and mostly we end up with pathological workaholism. We may or may not achieve success, but we certainly achieve exhaustion. All this to say, if you're not perfectly clear on your purpose, try lightening up a little bit about what purpose is or what you believe it's supposed to be. See if that helps. Definitely don't sweat it if you're not sure what it is right now. If you need to have a clear purpose in order to have a satisfying life, something will come to you. Another assumption we make about purpose, or more to the point, a thing we've been told to believe about it, is that it is one thing, that you should be able to define it in a few words and pursue it with dogged persistence. Yeah, about that. Saying everyone should have a single pinpoint focus throughout their lives is kind of like saying you should only ever have one relationship, one child, one job you do for your entire career, one hobby, one home address your entire life long. Sure, some people may have that, but they are definitely not the majority. And at any given moment in your life, you're juggling multiple interests and responsibilities, and that's normal. Odds are you have some parts of your life you love, some parts you really do not love, some you endure, some you don't feel really that strong about one way or another. And if you're lucky, there are a handful of things in your life that you are passionate about. And if you're looking for your purpose, that's a good place to start. You might have a couple of different things you're passionate about that seem completely unrelated. And yet, if you dig a little deeper, you discover that there's a thread that winds through them. For example, I like gardening and travel. And those two things might seem unrelated and even work a little bit at cross purposes, since a garden can suffer some neglect if a traveler's on the road for a few weeks. But those two things have lots of things in common if you take a closer look. If I bring home a cookbook from Italy and I grow basil and oregano in my garden, there's a connection. Learning about new plants and learning about new cities both involve a combination of research and direct experience, and an interesting balance of control and surrender. In both cases, you might do a lot of planning, but in the end, the weather is going to have a big impact on the outcome. So one way to discover something about your purpose is to look for the common threads that wind through your passions. And maybe you find something, maybe you don't. Your purpose can be the pursuit of half a dozen things that are unrelated, and if it makes you happy and feels right to you, you're good. You have all the clarity you need, and all those motivational speakers babbling about the one thing can keep their signed copies of their New York Times bestseller. So what about that third part? I talked about not worrying about knowing your purpose, And I talked about your purpose maybe being more than one thing. But what about significant experiences being unrelated to your purpose? Earlier this summer, I watched a movie called Soul. Maybe you saw it too. If you haven't and you planned on it, you might want to press pause here and come back to watch the rest of my talk afterwards. It depends on how you feel about spoilers. I am going to give away some of what's important in the story, so I'll give you a second to disconnect from the Zoom if you need to, and you can come back for coffee hour. Okay, for everyone who's still with me, in this movie, we discover a place where souls exist before they come down to Earth to inhabit bodies. As a kind of a fun side note for those of us in the UU space, they managed to approach this in a remarkably non-religious way. Anyway, we meet a particular soul who is very resistant to the notion of going to Earth. She, and I'm calling this creature she because the voice actor is female, not because the soul necessarily has gender. She's been going through a process that all souls go through to find the spark that will become a key piece of the identity of the being they inhabit on Earth. This particular soul has been at this for the Earth equivalent of hundreds of years, taking guidance from hundreds of frustrated mentors, and still she has not found her spark. As we follow her journey and that of the other characters in the story, we see and are meant to infer that they find their spark by being exposed to the different careers, foods, items, and hobbies that are available on Earth. So they can try, for example, ice cream and cars and basketball. And we watch as some of the other souls get excited when they try a thing. And boom, they get their Earth pass and they are headed to Earth to inhabit a body. But over the course of the story, we come to understand this process differently. We come to realize that while the little soul that just got their Earth pass was playing basketball at that moment, basketball wasn't necessarily the thing that created the spark. It might have been teamwork or movement or competition. Of course, those things aren't as simple as they are not as simple to define as basketball. But on reflection, it's obvious that they're just as important and just as life-giving as any simple thing you could name. And that's what I mean about finding the common threads that tie your passions together. If you think about it a little bit, there's a very good chance that some theme runs through the things you love in your life. In the movie, the stubborn soul who doesn't want to go to Earth finds herself transported there by accident and against her will. Through her experience, we discover something else important that wasn't obvious at first. The things the souls experience are really only shadows of the real thing. The souls have no bodies and therefore have no senses, at least not in the way we have them in our bodies. And so the first time she experiences food with the corporeal sense of taste, touch, and smell, it's quite an unexpected shock for her. Each corporeal experience she approaches with this intense sense of wonder and amazement that comes from attending to the present moment with all of her senses. And this is the real message of the movie, and also the real message of my talk this morning. The spark that gives your soul a reason to be on Earth is not cars or ice cream or basketball or even teamwork or competition. It's not some flowery purpose statement or motivational speaker's definition of success. It's the way you feel when you're gliding down the highway with the top down. It is coldness and sweetness and creaminess and brain freeze and laughing with your friends in the sun. It's the rush of adrenaline as the ball is passed to you, the euphoria of making the shot, the roar of the crowd, the elation when your team wins. It's grilled cheese and tomato soup on a rainy day. It's the sun dappling through the leaves on a spring morning. It's the silence of a snowfall and the chaotic majesty of a thunderstorm. It's a raucous rock concert and a serene string quartet. It's building a birdhouse with your dad, or fishing with your cousin, or baking with your grandmother. The thing that gives your soul a reason to be on earth is any moment that makes you feel fully, gloriously, completely alive. And so my invitation to you is this: don't worry too much about your purpose. If you know what it is, great. Pursue it with gusto, robustitude. If you don't, that's fine too. If you're supposed to have one, or more than one, it will find you if you allow rather than force it to come to you. If you're of a mind to look for it, start with your passions and look for themes. But most importantly, redirect some of your attention away from the relentless pursuit of the things you've been told to do or want or be. Instead, bring every cell of your being into the present moment and notice the joy and the beauty in what you already have and what you already are. You can stop looking for the ocean. It is all